Western Center on Law and Poverty was born at the University of Southern California Law School in 1967, in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement. President Johnson had declared a war on poverty. The federal government had begun to fund neighborhood legal aid programs in major U.S. cities, and Earl Johnson, then at the Office of Economic Opportunity in Washington, D.C., made sure that legal services funding included impact advocacy. Western Center was the brainchild of USC law professor Marty Levine, who believed injustice needed to be fought systemically.
The idea behind the Western Center was to provide sophisticated legal backup as cases were uncovered or discovered that really went to the heart of the system that was depriving poor people as classes of people of certain kinds of benefits or access or rights.
We started with just an idea to try for the very best kind of program we could. And then we found that there were people who wanted to support that kind of a program.
Remember, in 1965 was the first Watts riot. The second Watts riot was in 1967, just as Western Center was getting started. And it was poor people, could we get them to trust the legal system to resolve their grievances?
Western Center on Law and Poverty stood out from the very beginning as making a public statement to society that everyone should have access to the courts. And not only making the public statement, but acting on it by bringing these lawsuits that brought about really measurable change in the community.
But we were blessed with having some of the brightest young people who not only were courageous and all, but compassionate and creative too, and the things that they were able to do and accomplish on behalf of the whole client community.
Novel and creative legal theories, coupled with careful selection and skilled lawyering, proved to be a recipe for some groundbreaking litigation victories.
Every case we took was going to affect a lot of people. It was going to affect the individuals in an important way. It was going to affect the law in California.
When I was just fresh out of law school interviewing for this fellowship, and I said, can you tell me a little bit about how you deal personally with working in such an uphill situation and losing cases? And Melinda Bird looked at me like I was out of my mind and said, we don't lose cases here.
When the Center's victories began to be undone by backroom political deals in the Capitol, Western Center opened the first legislative office in the country dedicated exclusively to representing the interests of poor people.
Some of the early leaders of the centers realized that if you can't represent your clients in the legislature, every case you win can be undone.
Today, as it celebrates its 40th anniversary, Western Center is stronger than ever. It has honed its mission from one of providing generalized poverty law advocacy and support to focusing specifically on the life and death areas of health, housing, public assistance, and access to courts.
We spent an extraordinary amount of time last year working with the state, with the counties, with recipients themselves to fashion a plan which is focusing on helping families get the skills and education and opportunities they need to become self-sufficient and move out of welfare permanently.
So now we're 2007, and this is the year of health, which is it's really funny when you think about just a few years ago, the year of health meant cutting the program. Now the conversation is about expanding Medi-Cal and simplifying Medi-Cal. Well, that has been central to Western Center's work in healthcare for, I would say, at a minimum, a decade.
It's important to have the heart for this stuff, but you got to have the brain for it too. And Western Center is the most wonderful, not only resource, but I would say goad. And I think of all of them, I have to say Christine Minahan has really been my hero. And whenever we get into a quagmire about how are we ever going to compromise ourselves out of this without compromising principles, Christine has one more idea, you know.
We are creating a more level playing field, that their resources can't be just pulled off the table without somebody putting in a fight for them.
The Western Center has achieved a tremendous amount of champion status in advocating in an effective way on behalf of the underserved.
As the center looks ahead to the next 40 years of advocating for low-income Californians, it faces some daunting challenges.
There are more and more poor people. There's more people in poverty today, percentage-wise in California, than there were 40 years ago, with increasingly complex needs.
There's a growing disparity between the rich and the poor, but the problems of the poor, if anything, are getting worse, and there are fewer resources being used to solve the problem, and we have, in my view, a society that is less and less caring about the poor.
The demographics show that we are going to have a growing gap of trained workers going forward in all sectors of the economy. I don't think we can afford to throw away any families anymore. We certainly can't afford to throw away the children in these welfare families.
Western Center does not get any federal funding. We rely on attorneys' fees, foundation grants, contributions from individuals and corporations to maintain our funding, but there's always many more needs than we can possibly serve.
Today, Western Center on Law and Poverty needs your support more than ever.
We invest in the Western Center because we know that we'll get a return on that investment, and that is effective, sound, prudent advocacy for the underserved at a time when it's not politically popular.
As a legal aid director, I don't think I want to do my job if I didn't have a Western Center.
One word that would capture my sense of the Western Center, it's justice.
Western Center's work literally saves lives.
We've given poor people in California a voice.